Trust is one of the critical factors in doing business in Japan. Hello, my name is Greg Story. I'm the president of Dale Carnegie Training here in Japan and also the best-selling author of Japan Sales Mastery. Well, it's Golden Week. We're on the holidays, not in the office today. We're here in the High Performance Center Annex Library doing a little bit of a take here on a little bit more general subjects. Normally I speak about very specific things around leadership or communications or sales, but I've had a request to talk a little bit more generally about doing business in Japan. So when I think about doing business in Japan, what differentiates that from doing business in other countries? I think one very, very important factor is trust. Now, if you're dealing with Japanese companies, the first thing we have to realize is that the opposite number, the person we're dealing with, is usually a salaried employee, and they've probably been in that company or will likely be in that company for their whole career in most part. And so job preservation and moving up smoothly through the ranks are the things foremost in their mind. So they're highly risk averse. They don't want to do anything new and different because there's risk attached to that. No matter how much that would benefit the company, if it looked like it might have any potential to create a problem for their career projection, they don't want to know about it. So the first thing is we've got to understand who is our opposite number that we're dealing with here. And so when we understand, okay, they're coming from a highly risk-averse environment, job protection, slow but gradual movement up through the ranks, not looking for becoming the star player, becoming the big income bringer into the company, the rainmaker, not thinking about that. They're thinking incremental steps. So when we approach Japanese companies, that's our opposite number. So we have to really work hard to overcome those feelings of concern about the riskiness of what we're doing. So we need to take away the risk. Now, you might be offering something that's free. If the service is not satisfactory, completely free, no charge. You might be offering warranties or guarantees on things to take away the risk. So if you think about whatever your product or service is, what can I do to diminish the risk factor for this person to take on a new client? Because invariably, you'll either have a completely new product in the market or you will be replacing another supplier who has possibly got a long relationship with that buyer. And here's a very important phrase to remember when you're dealing with Japan. Japanese love the devil they know a lot more than the angel they don't know. And if you're a new player in the market, or this is a new client for you, you are definitely the angel they don't know, and they prefer the devil they do know over you. So to supplant the existing supplier or get a foothold into that company, you've got to be prepared to work on some things that will make sense to that buyer around risk reduction. And remember, Japan being the nature of the way it is built here around the distribution system and the many layers within organizations and many layers within industries around how goods and services move, often you could be at a point in supply to your buyer, but then your buyer will have multiple other buyers down the food chain that they'll be supplying. And the last thing they want is to endanger that distribution route through something that you do that creates a problem. So you say something's going to happen, it doesn't happen. You say it's going to be delivered on time, it doesn't get delivered on time. It's not just the fact of, oh, okay, we missed a shipment, we'll catch it up. They know they now have to go and talk to all of the others in that food chain about what's happened, who in turn have got people they've promised product or whatever to, that they now have to go and say, look, I'm sorry, it's not going to turn up. When I was in the export business to Japan, we were selling what is actually a thing for the gardens. It's bark, and the bark it's got to be clean bark, so there's no twigs, there's no rocks, just the pure bark itself. It gets compressed and then put into containers, shipped on big container ships up to Japan. We had an order, it was a first order, Japanese buyer. They had a whole raft of garden supply companies they were going to supply the bark to. Company rings us up, says, oh, by the way, we missed the ship. The container didn't make it. As if that was like nothing. Well, I can tell you, when one of my Japanese staff called that company and told them the very bad news that that container missed the ship, but it would be on the next ship, which is like weeks away, I'm telling you, she was holding the phone away from her head like this. You could hear the yelling. You could hear the yelling of abuse that far across the office because that person was enraged not because they missed just the ship and it's going to be a couple of weeks late. They were enraged because we had put at peril their long-established, hard-earned relationships in the distribution channel. So trust is a very big deal here. And if you think about too, with big players like the Japanese Sogo Shosha, the big trading companies, they're able to give very long terms of payment. So often competitors for your product can buy from the Sogo Shosha, the trading company, land the product, sell it in the market, and then pay the Sogo Shosha, the trading company, later. Very hard to compete with that type of thing because there's like no risk attached to that. So when we think about establishing ourselves with partners in Japan, we've got to think very, very carefully about that trust element. And don't expect you're going to get a deal in one meeting. It'll take multiple meetings. In my own business and the Dale Carnegie business, we are constantly having, oh yes, we met this client 4 years ago, we've just done our first deal. Oh, we met this client 3 years ago, we've just done our first deal. Oh yes, we met this client 2 years ago, we've just done our first deal. That is the nature of business in Japan. It's very long term. So unless you're prepared for that, it's going to make a problem, because if you're working off quarterly earnings results in the market and therefore your shares are impacted by how you perform, the pressure internally on anybody inside the company to get quarterly results is massive. But this is not a quarterly results play here. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4 year play, and you've got to be able to sustain that over that period of time to win in the market. So building trust, you've got to have a long-term perspective. It's not going to happen in one meeting. You've got to think about who you're dealing with, and you've got to think from their point of view about what they need to be getting inside this deal for their distribution system to survive and prosper. So here's a few things to think about when you're thinking about doing business in Japan. And I'm going to continue this little series, let's do a couple more, about some topical interest areas that I think might be important for someone who's just started dealing with Japan or is looking to deal with Japan. Well, I hope that was helpful.